Now, The Pack is a 2015 movie that tells the story of how a farmer and his family must fight for their lives after a terrifying pack of wild dogs attack their isolated farmhouse. Now, through a series of frightening and violent encounters, they are forced into survival mode in order to make it throughout the night. Because the common theme of this movie is one of Murphy's Law, where anything that can go wrong will go wrong. With limited resources, how would his family survive the night? But did you know that this movie is based on a real-life incident where some rural outback wild dogs attacked a family in Australia? Yeah, now to help bring this movie to life, 5 trained attack dogs were brought into South Australia from New South Wales to appear in this movie. True story. When it comes to The Pack, what I loved about this movie is that it has high stakes. The family is basically placed in a no-win situation, and things just seem to spiral out of control, and they're put in even worse predicaments as the movie continues. Now, this movie quickly established the ferociousness of the dog by having them run through an old couple on the farm. Because at first, you aren't aware that these are even a pack of dogs, but you're thinking that maybe this is just one big werewolf. And I like how they made these dogs seem larger than life early on. So when we meet our heroes, which are like the neighbors to the old couple, we as the audience understand that they're in grave danger. But the best part about how this movie raises the stakes is by having this father and husband of the family almost get chased down right from the start. At first, he's investigating the cause of his dead sheep at night, nonetheless. So while doing so, he's walking back to his house. Then he hears multiple sounds of what appears to be animals quickly surrounding him. His walk gets a little faster, and so do those footsteps. Then he starts to jog, and the footsteps of the animals move a little quicker. Now, by this point, we believe he's about to be dog food. So he runs into a full sprint and makes a beeline to the front door of his house. As we, the audience, can hear the animal sprinting behind him. And as soon as he slammed the door, boom, there's an immediate thud. Now we, as well as his family, can hear the pitter-patter of those animals' footsteps as they pace back and forth around the front porch. And all of a sudden, we hear major thuds at the door, as if the dogs are trying to break the door in. In fact, they're actually doing more than trying at this point, because their entrance into that house is imminent. And then we hear a glass break. We can only assume that some of the dogs have now came in through the window of the one place the family have decided to barricade themselves in. And from there, it's an all-out war of attrition, because earlier in this movie, the youngest child, their son, took the bullets to the shotgun that their dad had in the house to keep in his secret stash collector box outside. Now, the one gun the family has doesn't have enough bullets. And at this point, you're thinking they have absolutely no chance. Now, the gore in this movie is actually a pleasant surprise as well. While it doesn't have the maximum amount of blood splatter as your typical horror movie, this movie does one thing very well. When the dogs attack, we get close up of the teeth of the dogs ripping the flesh of their victims. And this is a consistent visual you see throughout this movie. And this is a little touch that makes these dogs look and feel scarier. And we get this visual no matter what they're biting or who they're biting. Now, sometimes it's a leg or arm or a neck or abdomen. You'll always see the flesh ripping apart. Now, sometimes, typically when it comes to horror movies, bad luck just seems to follow the victims. And sometimes the way people get themselves killed is almost as if they're asking for it. They just seem to do dumb stuff and make multiple bad decisions. But in this movie, it appears our filmmakers actually took the time to make the mistakes and bad luck become organic. There's never a moment where you're like, "What are you doing? That's stupid." The bad luck is organic and not forced in this movie. It's actually part of the story. So when our leading family need an item or some sort of help and is unable to get it, you'll end up saying, "Man, I wish they would have done this or done that." And to have that subtlety in this movie makes it all the more enjoyable. Now, the best part about this movie is that no one does anything that a normal human couldn't do to kill these dogs. Most of the time in movies like these, someone does something that makes you think, there's no way anyone could get away with that in real life. And this movie portrays this family as normal. They all act human. The dad isn't overly strong, the mother isn't overly brave, and the children are children who make childish decisions. And in horror, someone usually emerges as the savior or does something that, if done in real life, would get them killed. Not in this movie. All decisions made within this movie is within the human limits. And I'm happy that this movie kept the characters grounded. But the biggest glaring problem occurs at the end of the movie when the family becomes victorious over the dogs. I might as well say it. They stay at their home. Most people who have been traumatized by a pack of dogs wouldn't stick around. These people decide to stay at the same house where they almost became dog chow. And I find that problematic. I'm going to leave it there, but when you finish watching this movie, you'll see the same thing that I saw. Because there's going to be a thing that occurs that will make you come back and be like, yeah, I agree with him. And for that, these characters are idiots for that, but I digress. Now, by far the most standout moment of this movie is when the dogs break in the house. There's a moment when the dad is running from the dogs and make it to the house and he thinks that he and his family is safe. But then these dogs do the most OG stuff ever and come in and wreck shop. And they have this take no prisoners attitude and take over the house. And that's when you knew you were watching a different kind of movie. And it was at that moment I knew everyone in that house was in danger. Now, in conclusion, The Pack is a movie that I enjoyed. I've watched it so many times now because it's a simple premise with a lot of action. The suspense was built up perfectly, and overall it's a pulse-pounding set of sequences that grabs you by the throat. No pun intended. Okay, well maybe it was a pun intended, but I give The Pack an 8 out of 10. It doesn't have a ton of layers to be a cinematic gold, but it's still a fun movie that I love to watch. So, have you seen The Pack? And if so, let me know what you thought about it. And until next time, when CEDtalks horror.